It was 1908 at Times Square in New York. A blizzard was coming, and prime automobiles from Europe and the United States took off for a race around the world. 100 years later, in 2008, a commemorative race took place with antique autos. Our guest was a participant in that race, driving this 1918 Chevrolet. He's now organizing a world tour event for 2013 to follow the path of the original race from 1908. Stay tuned and hear about everything.
Welcome to The Better Part, a program that encompasses a diverse spectrum of topics important to our community, which we hope will both inform and entertain you. We invite you to sit back and enjoy the program.
Our guest is Luke Rizzuto, owner of this great 1918 Chevrolet behind us. So glad you're here to tell us about all these old cars and auto races and everything. And I think your major concern here today is you want to tell us about this world tour event that you're organizing for 2013. But before we begin, let's kind of start at the origins of all of this and have you tell us about that great auto race in 1908.
Okay. Well, the great auto race of 1908 pretty much put the automobile on the map. There were some prior races to that, like Horatio's drive from San Francisco to New York in 1904, and then the first Peking to Paris race was 1907. But the great race of 1908 actually put the automobile on the map. And how it started out was the New York Times and a French newspaper was sponsoring the race, and we had entries from Germany, Italy, France, but no one from America. So Teddy Roosevelt called up E.R. Thomas of the Thomas Flyer Company and said, we have to have a participant in this race. It is a must. And so E.R. Thomas called his head mechanic, George Schuster, and said, you got to be in Times Square, New York in the morning. You're going around the world in a car. And they pulled a car off the assembly line to run the race. Well, George Schuster, of course, he had a wife and 4 kids. He thought it was pretty much impossible, so he went ahead and said, okay. And he figured after a couple of weeks, the race would be called off because they started in midwinter. And 167 days later, he was the winner of the great race. He arrived in Paris.
He hadn't even tested the car.
Never tested the car. He had 3 other people ride with him. He started driving in the western states. There was a driver prior to him, but didn't work out, so he started driving it. So to date, he's probably the only man to ever drive around the world. Now, they left in midwinter. The biggest question I get is, why did they leave in midwinter? Well, the original race actually was supposed to run from Times Square to San Francisco, drive up the coast, up through Alaska, across the Bering Strait, and down through Siberia. Well, when they arrived in Alaska, you know, natural lakes freeze smooth. Saltwater freezes in boulders. So they couldn't get there. So George Schuster proposed that they take the car apart. The car weighed 6,000 pounds, and 10 dog sleds could dog sled it over to Siberia, but it was another $10,000 at that time, so the New York Times wouldn't go for it. So he ferried the car back to Seattle and then shipped it to Japan.
What a thing, and just no planning at all on his part. Well, I'm thinking about the roads, the highways now.
Well, there were none.
I'm thinking of crossing Siberia. How would they, I know that at that time they at least had built, I think, a train.
There wasn't any roads actually anywhere. There was less than 500 miles of paved road throughout the whole United States. So they took mostly wagon trails and stuff, and they were shoveling 20-foot snowbanks. They had to drain the car every night, build a fire under it every morning.
What do you mean drain the car? So the gas
Water.
freeze?
No, water, so the water wouldn't freeze.
Radiator.
They didn't have antifreeze at that time, so they drained the car, and then built a fire under it in the morning to get it started because the gas wasn't that volatile as it is today. They put water in it. They had to shovels 20-foot snow drifts. They had been pulled by horses a few times.
Oh, they did.
They got stuck. They got stuck in a creek in Nevada, and George Schuster tore out a ring gear in the differential, and he had to hike 60 miles to Tonopah, where a dentist owned the same year Thomas Flyer, and he assured the dentist that a Thomas Flyer mechanic would be out with a brand new part if he could have the ring gear. And he gave it to him, so he had to take the car apart there,
Oh my goodness.
come back to where the car was stuck in the mud, and he laid in the mud for 4 or 5 hours, putting the car back together again and getting it running again.
Well, that's something I was wondering about. What they did. Did everyone take a mechanic along with them and spare parts?
They took some spare parts that they had, but George Schuster was the head mechanic. So, and the cars in those days were very simple. You only needed a few wrenches.
And what did they use for fuel?
Well, there was no service station at that
Crossing
time.
Siberia or even the U.S. in
The
1908.
hardware stores in the United States actually sold fuel for the farmers.
Oh, that's right.
So they didn't have any fuel stations. So they would stop at a hardware store. And then across Siberia, the New York Times and the French newspaper stationed gas in certain increments. So they had gasoline
Big tankers,
available.
you mean? Or?
No, just 5-gallon cans or 50-gallon drums or something like that. They
It
didn't
was
have any
almost
tankers
like
at
a
that time.
foot race, foot
That's correct,
marathon
yeah.
or something.
Yeah, and there was virtually no roads through Siberia, so they were in mud bogs and snow
And were there
and
heaters
ice
in
and
the cars?
no heaters. It was an open car, no windshields,
My goodness.
and I have some original pictures, and they're dressed in bearskin coats and goggles, and they kept warm the best
What
they
an
could.
adventure.
They slept under the car in foul weather, and it was quite a feat. I mean, it can only be one great race because we can't duplicate it today.
No, it wouldn't ever be
yeah,
the same.
yeah.
The only thing, the cars were new cars then. They weren't antique cars.
That's
They were
correct.
the best that
They
there
were the
was
best
at
technology,
the time.
yes.
But then even food, did they ever get a hot meal?
Yes, they they would stop at hotels. I have
okay.
pictures of hotels and stuff that they stopped at, and they brought canned food with them and beans. And,
Yeah, I'm thinking
you know,
Siberia, but they did build fires then at night.
Yeah,
They could-
yeah. Yeah, they
I
had
see.
to. It was midwinter, so it was very cold.
But I can't even imagine if they had 4 people, how they even stored their food, because there's no roof.
Well, that's
on
true.
The car.
The car weighed 6,000 pounds, and if you saw pictures of the original car, they had 2x12 planks across the fenders and storage areas, and everything was roped on the car in front of the radiator and stuff like that. And I want to point out that this car is actually 10 years newer than the 1908 Thomas Flyer, so this is actually a little bit more modern than the '08. So,
Oh, yes.
you know.
Well, tell us about this car then.
This car is a 1918 Chevrolet V8. It's the first overhead valve V8 produced, and there's only 10 known to exist. This is the last car that Louis Chevrolet designed. It is also the first side-by-side rod V engine. Up until then, it was fork and sickle on the rod connections. This is a side-by-side rod engine. It's the first twin universal joint drive shaft. So it's a very advanced car. It's electric start, very powerful for its time, and it sold for $1,385 in 1918.
Wow.
This car has less than 8,000 miles on it. It's all original down to the paint.
And where did you acquire it from?
I acquired it from the museum through a middleman that traded a $150,000 toy collection in the museum for 5 cars, but he only wanted the Packard Darren. So he sold off the other 4, and I was very lucky to call at the right time and got the deal on the phone.
And how many miles were on it when you purchased it?
About 4,600 miles. And I put about 2,000 miles on it on the race.
That was in the Henry Ford Museum.
Yes, they owned it. Henry Ford Museum acquired it from the original owner in 1938. And they had it up until 1989.
You decided to recreate this race after 100 years. Are you the one who started the race that happened in 2008, the commemorative race?
Indirectly, what happened is I was invited on the great race that was supposed to happen in 2008 because this is a milestone car. And they ended up going bankrupt in September. Now, the race was supposed to go off in May, but they delayed it and delayed it and delayed it. And they said, well, we're going to go bankrupt and nothing's going to happen. Well, you only have one 100th anniversary. So what I did is I put out a mass email and told people, this is a free race. You're responsible for your own gas, food, and lodging. And I'm going to leave Times Square, New York on October 18th with or without people, because I was going to celebrate it myself.
Now, it was originally going to go around the world, the same route
Original
that
one
they
was going to
took.
go to Paris. And because it never happened, I couldn't get the thing together that quick. So we went from Times Square, New York, to San Francisco. I had 16 people show up in Times Square. A couple flew in from Germany, and a gentleman flew in from Ireland. And I had Ray Fowler, who is a great race historian, and he filmed the documentary of the Great Race in 2007. He was on the race, and I had the great-grandson of George Schuster, Jeff Mall, was also on the race. So I had all the
imagine.
history people, and we left Times Square, New York on the exact route. So we deciphered George Schuster's diary and hit every town that he hit, including ghost towns and ghost town sites and dirt roads and ranches that they hit in 1908. So about 97% of our race was very authentic and a great history lesson.
And it must have been so fun going over the old country roads instead of using the freeways. Was there any problem with going over? There were still some dirt roads?
Oh
you
yeah,
had
we
to
took
travel?
about 500 miles of dirt roads, and there was no problem. It was a little bit late in the year. I was kind of worried about weather, but the weather was behind us. As we were driving, the cold weather was setting in behind us, so we were very lucky. But one of the problems was, because I never set up a race like this before, as the moment we left Times Square, we had towns that wanted to see us because they were involved in the Great Race. So, for instance, we left Times Square, and our first stop was Briarcliff. And Briarcliff had a 75-car parade in our honor as we drove through there, and lunch was supplied and stuff like that. And then from there on, I had to answer emails every night because the towns along the way wanted us to stop. So we had just a great hospitality
Oh my
experience
God.
coming
What
cross
fun.
country.
My goodness.
I even had a young lady email me and said that George Schuster turned around in her grandmother's yard in Waterloo, Indiana, and signed a book, and would I turn around in the same yard and sign the book? And I said, of course. So we found the yard, I turned around, and we're in communication now to get the book and sign it. But yeah, this was an unbelievable experience. It mushroomed so quickly on me. I just went along with it, and it turned out to be very much a success, and everybody enjoyed it.
How close were the cars? Because I know in the first race they were strung out all over
We were
the world.
my brother and his wife Judy was the one that was the navigator, and she plotted the directions and the towns we went through, and they were in front of us, and then the antique cars were behind that. And we had about 100 antique cars come and go because they couldn't come for the full 3 weeks. So we had about 100 cars come and go, but there
So
was
they were
6
joining
core
you
cars.
along the route?
Yes, yes.
And so then it sounds like maybe you had scheduled hotels in advance, and everyone stopped at the same place at night.
Yes, but we didn't do it in
stayed.
advance because we didn't know where we were going to be the next day.
Oh,
So when we left that morning, we plotted about 200 miles, and then we called ahead, and the hotels were available. And then every night we were working on our cars and stuff, and it was mechanics night every night. And we'd have hot meals. We'd prepare our own meals sometimes, or go out to dinner. But I tried to make it affordable so that just the average person could have some fun.
did the hotels let you just work on your cars, or did you have to go out somewhere?
No, they let us work on our cars in the parking lots as long as we didn't get any oil or anything around. They were thrilled to have us there and stuff, and didn't have any problems with any of the hotels whatsoever.
Were there any scary times or difficult times?
No, I had some gas problems in this, and some oil pressure problems, and then I twisted off a generator gear in Iowa, Ames, Iowa, and the generator runs the distributor on this. So I was dead in the water. So I went to this gentleman here, G&K Machine in Denver, and he machined a new gear for me to get the car back on the road. So just little things happened. I had, besides this car, I had a 1930 Chevrolet Speedster that was hand-built by Ray Fowler, the historian. I had a 30 Chrysler Roadster that was restored by a gentleman named John Quam up in Half Moon Bay. I had a 40 Cadillac 75 sedan with us. A 46 Dodge rolled in about a week into the race. A 67 Beetle.
These were all your cars?
No, these were all
you mean
participant
just
cars that
participants.
just came in. The gentleman flew in from Germany. He rented a Buick in New York and drove it to California. And then we had another gentleman, Rodney Rucker, built a hot rod semi-truck and came on the race with us.
Oh my goodness. I can imagine there would kind of be all kinds of people, some who just love to drive, and then some who are more into the mechanics of it, I
Yeah, you are correct.
suppose.
Yes,
and
we had all
adventuresome people.
Yes.
Who, like the man from Germany who came in and rented a car.
Yeah. Yes.
Oh, it sounds like so much fun. And so then everyone had their mechanics along, or either
Well,
knew
pretty
how to
much,
do it themselves.
pretty much everybody that came along was a mechanic. We didn't go out for any type of repair outside of our group, and everybody helped one another. So it was a really good, tight group. And it really wasn't a race, it was more of a tour. I called it a race because of the great race.
You were a caravan,
but
so
we
it
were,
couldn't
but
have
we
been
were
a
a
race.
caravan tour that saw the history.
Would it have been a race if it had happened to be the world trip like was originally planned?
Yeah, the
Would it have
original
been a
great race was going to be a car rally.
Uh-huh.
And you had to take, it was a timed rally between points and stuff like that, which now I'm glad I didn't get involved in it, because a timed rally, you've got your eye on the speedometer and the stopwatch,
Not
and you
a
don't
lot
get
of
to see
fun.
any scenery. Well,
Right.
we saw all the points. We did, in Springfield, New York, we saw the gravesite of George Schuster, and the school there, 600 kindergartners welcomed us, so we spent the day in Springville, and the townspeople opened the doors for us and stuff like that. We had numerous towns along the way do that same thing. We had people arrive at the hotel, greet us in, and show us some sights, restored gas stations, buildings where George Schuster stopped, and spent the night and all the way through. For instance, that incident where he twisted off the ring gear in Nevada, the ranch owner brought us right to the spot where he twisted off the
Oh my goodness.
ring gear, and we saw exactly where he was, and some of the old houses he stayed in and stuff. So we saw a bunch of stuff. It was a great history lesson.
Oh, that sounds so fun. And now you're wanting to do it again. You're trying to, or you now are organizing this world tour event.
Yes, in 2013, I'm planning the Paris leg of the Great Race, and that is we have to ship our cars from San Francisco to Japan, drive across Japan, ferry over to Vladivostok in Russia, and drive straight across Siberia to St. Petersburg and then down to Paris. And then after that's done, then that would be the Great Race venture. But I figured because we have to get our cars home, that I would extend the race, and this would be something no one else has ever done. And we're going to leave Paris, drive up to England, have our cars ferried to Iceland. We're going to drive around Iceland, because the highway around Iceland is one of the most 10 beautiful roads in the world. Then we're going to have our cars ferried to Greenland and drive between the villages of Greenland, and then ferry over to Canada, and then drive down through Canada and arrive back in Times Square on August 12th, which would be 105 years to the day that George Schuster arrived after winning the race. No one else has ever driven around the world.
My goodness. How many, do you have people signed up yet?
Yes, I have actually the original group that I met. We're all signed up. I have been getting some interested parties. I've got to keep it small and manageable, though, because of the ferry situation and the transport, but I am welcoming anyone that would like to come along. And again, the race is free. You're responsible for your own gas, food, and lodging and shipping. And I'm trying to make it affordable because we can share containers. Like a container from San Francisco to Japan is $10,000, but you can put 6 cars in it. So that drops the price down to $1,500 each.
So then they pay for their gas and their meals in the hotels, but then you all split the ferry services.
Yeah,
is
we
that
try
it?
to work as a team and split services. Like my car will ride 4 people. If I got a couple of people that want to share expenses, they can ride along. And it'll be a great historical
Oh my goodness.
endeavor, because we've already got the course plotted, the exact course that George Schuster took in 1908 to Paris. So we have that plotted already through Siberia.
Now, there's no way that it can be a really race then, because you're all going on the same ferries. and
That's
so
correct.
forth.
It's a tour.
You're
It's a
just
historical
it's
tour.
a
yeah.
tour,
Yes.
the historical tour.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yes.
And what are the requirements for anyone to enter this?
There's actually, I don't have any requirements except that you have to afford the situation.
It's I'm
you can
thinking
take a
it's,
modern car, because my race here was 100 years of automotive innovation. So you could take a modern car if you want. I prefer antiques, of course,
I
but
thought it was
you can
supposed
take
to be.
anything you want. Again, we're going to share expenses as much as we can. Hotels, there may be 2 weeks where we'll be sleeping on the ground, because there won't be any hotels available in parts of Siberia and stuff. But that's part of the adventure.
So, because I know someone who is building a Model T, and he's putting a VW engine in it.
One gentleman that's coming is having a 30 Plymouth Roadster built with a Dodge Slant 6 in it, and a modern running gear. So you can take anything you want.
What about a Hummer?
You can take a Hummer. You can afford
That
it.
would
Be my
funny.
guest.
Well, I'm thinking this could almost be this would almost have to be a rich man's adventure, because you've got to be able to take off work.
Well,
unless
that's
it's
true.
all
And
retired
like I say,
people.
I'm trying to make it affordable for just about anybody. It's we're going to be about 3 months on the road, and like I say, I'm trying to make it inexpensive so the average guy can afford it, because I'm just an average person myself. And
Well, I know that you grew up on a farm in Santa Cruz.
yes,
And are you still living in that same farm?
yes, I still live on the same ranch that we used to
It's an orchard,
fruit
or-
market. It's an orchard, yes.
It was the Rizzuto. Is that what it's called? The Rizzuto.
Well, that's a Rizzuto Ranch, yeah, yeah.
Same name. And are you still operating it? Or
No,
just-
we grow the fruit for ourselves, and we still maintain the orchard, but we don't ship anymore.
And you have other antique cars up there.
Yes, I have a 1958 Chevy Impala coupe that's I'm the second owner of. I bought it when my oldest son was born, and a 65 Corvette convertible that I bought from. I'm the third owner that I bought out of an estate sale, and then this one. And this is, of course, is my prize, because I could never duplicate this car.
Well, you, we saw you for the first time at an antique car show in San Jose, and there were a lot of interesting cars over there, but this was definitely one of the most interesting. And you said you're trying to acquire another car?
Yeah, I'm trying to.
You're working on some.
I'm working on acquiring maybe another a car that's in pieces.
That was the LaSalle.
Yeah,
is
it's
it?
a 32 LaSalle convertible coupe. Yes, and that's the one I would like to take on the race.
Oh.
This
You have
one is a really nice car, but in Europe I'd be afraid of taking it. If something breaks, it's pretty much everything has to be machined. There's no extra parts for this car.
Oh. Well, that's interesting, just because it's older then.
Yes, and it's very unique. This car is a real head turner. Every show I take it to,
Really?
I've got a crowd of people around it all day long.
Oh, it's beautiful. It looks like burl.
Yeah, it's
oh,
mahogany,
yeah.
all mahogany interior,
It's gorgeous.
leather seats and nickel plating.
It's beautiful. And you didn't have to do much to this car after you acquired it, did you? Just
No, I just
because it was in such good condition.
yeah. In fact, I was the first one to start it in 50 years. I got it to my place, and I cleaned out the gas tank and the vacuum tank, and cleaned the oil pan and the carburetor, and I started it up, and I've been driving it ever since.
Are you going to have a big celebration when you get back from this trip,
I hope
the
so.
tour? I mean, like, would everybody in the valley come to see it? Or what's the final?
Well, the final
It would be in
the final destination after we hit Paris would, of course, be Times Square to
Times
celebrate
Square.
George Schuster's arrival. But I
Right.
have to get home, so I will be driving
So,
back to the Bay Area.
so it
here.
might be a mini celebration.
yes,
But
along the way.
would there be one in Times Square, do you suppose?
You know, I
or-
don't know. I tried to get national press coverage on the race. I could not do it. All the local newspapers and TVs were just thrilled to have us come through their town, but I couldn't get any national. And San Francisco didn't react to us. We went to the
Really?
Ferry Building and had lunch, and there was no one there. So,
I guess it depends on what's going on at the time.
well,
You
it's
just
promoting
never
too,
know.
and
Yeah.
you know, you have to have connections to promote. And we
Yeah.
weren't doing it for the promotion. We were doing it for the history and the personal endeavors.
If someone could, people, if they wanted to make this tour and couldn't finance it, is it possible to get someone to sponsor it, like, or would that be
Oh no, I would love
taking away,
I would love a sponsor.
like maybe something like this, that a repair shop or a
Yes.
supplier, something
yeah,
like
suppliers. Or I invited Chevrolet and their new Volt on the race. I don't know if that's going to happen, but
was
I'm open to
clever.
any type of sponsorship. I think it's because I'm a Chevy man.
Right.
I thought that it would be good to have a new car and see how it would perform on the race.
that. How much do you estimate if you split it 4 ways?
Well, I figure a rough budget per car is about 60,000.
60,000.
And that's
so that's
gas, lodging, food, and stuff like
Shipping.
that. Shipping. Now the ferry services between, I don't know that yet. I'm still working that out. And of course, there's visas involved that you would be responsible to get your own visa and stuff. But I have to. I have a few contacts I have to talk to about that. But you know, if anyone is interested out there, I would welcome
Oh boy,
it.
would I love to do that. But I don't think
a trip
I'd
of a
want to.
lifetime.
I wouldn't want to sleep on the ground in Siberia. I don't
Well, I'm
think.
not crazy about it either, but you know, I am a
But,
veteran,
sure.
so I can sleep on the ground.
If someone would like to contact you about this race, either to join up with you or just to learn more about it, how would they get in touch with you?
They could call me at 408-590-2946, and I have a website. It's the longest auto race cent, CENT.com. And I do a 30-minute slideshow of the original race and my race for anyone that's interested in learning more about the historical great race and my race and the future race. And all you have to do is call me, and if you got a group of people you want me to do a slideshow for, I'll be more than happy to show up and do it.
Thank you so much. This has been a lot of fun for me.
Well, thank you.
And I hope you get some recruits, and we'll be watching.
Yes.
We want to
Well,
talk
maybe,
to you. when-
maybe you could come along.
Oh, I would love it. If you would come back and tell us after your tour,
I would be more
we'd
than
love
happy
to have you on and hear about that.
I would be
know
more
you'll
than
bring
happy
us
to.
a lot of pictures, so
Yes. Yes.
great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.